Oh, what on earth? Oh, I bet I know. Oh, I bet I know. Oh, I'm silly. Aha. We have audio. Good, 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 good. Okay. We're not going to get started quite yet. If you haven't turned in your stuff, make sure you get it turned in either on the server here or on D2L. Those of you popping in remotely, same thing. Yeah, I got you. It feels pretty light though. You're good. Hello. It's going. Overlapping action day.
Overlapping action day, the most important day of the entire semester?
I know. No, that was last class. That was Graph Editor.
Oh.
Yeah.
They learned some tricks.
I got them with the graph. You know I'm about the graph and
Yeah.
that's not the noise of 2020.
It is, yeah.
That's my noise for like all.
Like, I've noticed that. I'm like, I'll go into class, I'll be like, how's everybody doing?
At least you get answers. This class will answer me, but none of my others will. This is my only chatty class.
How many people are from home?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
Yeah.
6, 7-ish. And then I got a spare in here from the morning class because he slept late.
Yeah, I think I have about the same as well.
Mm-hmm. My principal's class, I have like 6 like that come in, and then they're all like the other like 25
Oh, wow.
are remote.
So we were, my principal's class is actually right next door just now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about half and half. I'm getting about
Okay.
11 in person, about 12 online.
That's not bad.
I
Mine's
think some of
slowly
that's,
getting
time of
more.
the day, too. I was that earlier class.
Yeah.
was getting that
It's a 10 a.m.
Yeah, Corey Reese has
Yeah.
8 a.m. or 8:15.
Yeah, I follow right behind him. Half of his students are also in my class, so they just sit there.
In the back, like, hey,
Yeah.
the thing I mentioned about the internship
Yeah.
may turn into, I don't know. I'm still working with them, but I think that's still going through.
Cool.
So I'll probably take your head here pretty soon.
Yeah, just let me know.
Trying to light a fire under them. Like every week they don't do it, is a week I have to do it.
Yeah. Well, let me know. I got some names. See ya.
Class, y'all. None of you overlapping actions.
Okay. So I'm going to resume my recording here. I'll have all of those links that we just watched on D2L. They should already be there. And I've got a couple of others I might throw on if the links are still valid. That'll also show you a bit more about overlapping action. So let's move on just a little bit. So go ahead and let's open up that Maya overlapping action in class. And you should get something that looks like this. Once you get it up, just go ahead and turn this layer in your channel box that's labeled balls. Just turn that on so we can see this stack of spheres that we made. And then once everybody has that open, just give me a thumbs up. That melody is going to be stuck in my head now. All right, thanks, Katie.
The balls will be in the overlapping action, or is it put in the same thing?
There's 2 files. I'm guessing that one.
Oh, okay.
And then you want that one. But that'll be a separate. That's your.
I have this on right now.
Yeah. So this is the one. You just want to turn on the layer.
Oh, I didn't.
You're good. Yeah, the swinging pendulum one's Project T, which will be starting today as well. Okay, so we have these turned on. Go ahead and right-click on your timeline and make sure that playback speed is either real time or max real time. That way, when we hit play, you don't get something chaotic. But when you do hit play, you should get something that looks about like this. So what I've done here is I've keyframed all of these balls to move at the exact same time. They kind of go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And what we want to do is take a minute and think about how would overlapping action make this look a little bit more natural. What could we convey about changing how these move around just by offsetting keyframes? So let's do this. So if we take this first ball here, it's labeled A, I have A through E, and we can see that we've got all these keyframes here. And if I highlight B through E, you can see their keyframes are exactly the same. So let's go ahead and offset all of the keyframes for both B, C, and D, and E just by 1. So I have all 4 of these highlighted, and I'm just going to shift, click, and drag my whole composition here. And I'm going to use these 2 little arrows in here and just shift them over 1 keyframe. Also make sure that you're right-clicking and snapping. That way you're making sure you're on a whole number. So when I was playing earlier, they all moved at the exact same time, same rate, same everything, right? If I hit play now, it looks like that top ball is dragging all the other ones behind it. Yeah? So what if we do the same thing, but with C, D, and E, offset those offsetted from B and A? So I'm going to shift, click, and drag all of those and shift them over 1 more. Snap those. So when I click on them now and hit play, now it looks like they're starting to follow it in a chain. So I'm going to do that again with D and E. I'm going to offset those 1 more time. 1 keyframe, hit snap. And again, it's already starting to overlap really nice. Those last 2 are still moving in tandem. And if I do just the last ball, go ahead and offset that one. I'm going to right-click and snap. Instead of them all moving like they're 1 object, now it looks like they're still part of a singular object, but they're moving with a bit more force. There's some drag. This looks more like a chain moving and less like an iron bar. And just by offsetting our keyframes 1 on each part, we've made something that looks a lot more natural, right? It's pretty cool. But how could we change this even more?
Give the end track.
Hmm?
Give the end of the ball track so that they go forward a little bit.
Yeah. So if I take this last one, let's just offset it maybe 2 or 3 and snap. Now it looks like it's got a ball on a string. Just by changing our overall timing, you can still tell it's moving in tandem, but it looks like it's a lot heavier, or it's on a longer rope. We can do the same thing if I just come over here and say, hey, I want C, D, and E to all be offset a little bit more from B. So I'll just shift them over 2, just like I did with the bottom one. And we can see how just by changing a couple more keyframes, just by offsetting them a little bit, we get something that looks a lot different. And it still looks natural. It looks a lot more natural than the original one, right? It does look like it's moving a little bit more in the 3D space. Yes. Yeah. I'll turn this grid off. Well. So does that make sense with kind of how we created that drag? We created that overlapping action. It had a nice, good follow from the lead here all the way down to the end. So let's do that with something a little bit more complex. I'm going to turn the ball layer off, and I'm going to turn on pendulum. And if I hit play, I've already got some keyframes here on the topmost part of this pendulum with its arm. And if we think about how we would make different types of things have this overlapping action, what first step do you think you would do for something like this? We already have our main keyframes. We've got our main poses. What would be the next step to get this overlapping action?
Offset it so that when it's moving forward, the other start to have to drag it to the left.
Yeah, so we would need to keyframe these little arm pieces here. So I'm going to open up box A to arm A, arm B, RC, and arm N. So we need to move these. So the next thought we need to think of is, hey, what do we want these to be made of? Do we want that arm to be made out of chain? Do we want it to be made out of something really light, like a really light plastic chain? Maybe a feather, silk, something like that. Or maybe it's made of lead. Maybe it's really heavy. So how we rotate this arm is going to really just show how and what this is made of. So I'm going to come out here and I'm going to say our box here starts moving at about frame 10. So I'm going to say at about frame 15 is when I'm going to have those arms start to move. So on frame 10, I'm going to go ahead and on each one of these arms, I'm going to set a keyframe. That way it doesn't start before. So on frame 15 here, I'm going to click this top arm. And before I even think of offsetting any keyframes or any motions at all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get all my big poses for this arm. So this is the same way you would do something like an arm for a character. It's the same kind of method as what we did for a jump, but slightly different. You could also do things with hands, cat whiskers if you're bending them forward to show motion, that sort of thing. Same with tails. It's still going to have all of your poses at the same time, and then you'll offset them to get that overlapping action. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use my rotation tool here on this frame 15 to go ahead and rotate my object. So all these little arm parts in order to get them nice and arced, because it's still going to be following that action. We're just not going to be offsetting anything quite yet. So we're going to go ahead and keyframe all of them. And that dreaded graph editor arrow project is no more. So you can definitely go back to using the S key now. So what we'll have is just scrubbing through from frame 1 to 15 is when it starts moving, the arm slings forward. Now it might be too soon for that to happen. That's okay, we can always change timing later. But first we want to get the motions down. So the next pose we need to think about is at what point does our mass change? What direction do we need to, when do we need to change that direction? So I'm going to say somewhere at about frame 45 or so. So it looks like frame 50 is where it changes its direction. So now we would need to take this arm and move it in the opposite direction, because we're thinking about how forces are working. We're thinking about how gravity works. And if you really want to think about how it will move. So arms can only bend so far, right? This, however, is made of something similar to a chain. It's blocky. It's not going to have the same physical restraints as like what a human body does. So if you had an arm that like came down, sure, you might overextend that a little bit, but it's not going to bend completely backwards. But something like a chain like this could go 160 degrees all the way around. Now keep in mind how gravity does work. If you have something like a pendulum and you pull it up and you drop it, it's only going to go the exact same amount once, and then it's going to slowly settle down at slower and slower increments. So let's say I'm going to go ahead and keyframe all of these so that when I hit play, it goes across. Now remember, it's not perfect yet. We'll still have to tweak some stuff. think our timing is off by about 5. That's all right. So now the thing starts going in the opposite direction. So I'm going to go out about 20 frames, and I'm going to rotate the exact same, except I'm going to slightly make them a little bit smaller. I'm not going to make it as much of an incline or as much of a rotation to this whole arm. And then I'm going to keep doing that process till I get it settled. So I'm going to go out another 20 frames, do the opposite, maybe make it even slighter, a lot closer to 0. But maybe I'm going to have this bottom piece be what comes out a little bit more. Set all of those. Maybe another 20 frames. And then just ever so slightly in the opposite direction. Maybe not even more than -1 at all. Set all of those. And then on that last 20, I'm just going to take them back all to 0. And then set their keyframes. Now, like I said, I think we're off just a little bit keyframe wise. I think we need to shift down a few, but I'm just going to go ahead and hit play to see what we have. So the settle looks pretty nice. We're offset just enough, kind of falls nice and evenly. It's just that first part that kind of feels a bit off. So what we'll do is I'm just going to highlight all of my arms, and I'm just going to shift, click, and drag, and I'm just going to move them all over about 5 frames, hit snap. Just remember, we're not offsetting anything yet. We're doing our very basic overlapping action. So that settle looks pretty good, but that first part still feels a bit weird. So I'm going to shift my frame 21 here out a little bit further. And that definitely seems better, right? But our overlapping action isn't very natural yet, right? We still have that arm coming up pretty quick, so we might have to scoot it down a little bit more. We might have to come up here, change an angle or so, tweak some stuff a little bit. This is the part you want to make sure your motion, even if it doesn't feel as natural because it's not every individual piece overlapping quite yet, you want to get it as close as you can before moving to the next step, which is everybody's favorite, playing in the graph editor. You want to make sure you get your graph editor done before you offset all your keyframes, because if you know that if I were to say, hey, on this bounce right here, I want to ease this keyframe in my rotate. Maybe I think it's the keyframe that's making it a little bit too bouncy. So I'm just going to ease that. That looks better. If I know I need to ease that on all of my arms here, so if I know I need to come down to my rotate, break those tangents just like I just did, ease that down a little. I might need to move this keyframe over a few. You might need to shift things. This is the step you want to do all that with. So if I'm like, I want this keyframe here on all my arms, this one right here, to be very bouncy. So more bounce-like. Come on. I'll have to manually come in here and get them all to be balancing. So just by changing these, it's already going to change my animation from what it was. So it looks like it hits something. It's a bit different, right? So maybe I have a block here that pops up and it hits, or maybe there's something blocking its way. Just by changing your graph editor, you get something different. So you want to do that before you move on to offsetting all of your arm pieces. So now that we have our animation roughly where we like it, it could definitely, this one, use some tweaking still. We're going to go ahead and move on. So I'm going to grab my arm B, C, and N, and I'm just going to shift, click, and drag them either one, maybe 2 keyframes off. Make sure I snap. Grab C and N, maybe take them 2 keyframes off. Snap those. And then maybe I'm just going to move the end just 1. Snap. So now we'll get something completely different, but it will feel more natural. And it'll be a little bit nicer. Does anyone have a question about that process at all? Or questions about overlapping action, drag, things like that?
Yeah, I have a problem over here.
What you got?
It's the line.
Okay. So I think these two are so close. So I would shift and drag. Pull it out a good like 15 frames or so. And you'll want to make sure you match that keyframe with all the other arm parts.
Okay.
Anyone that's remoting in have any questions about the overlapping action or how to get something like this pendulum to move a little bit more naturally? Question over here. You just keep doing, you just keep adding it before you start offsetting your arms. General confusion, you'll sort it out later. Okay. Stick around and I'll see if I can fix your confusion. So, I had you download some other stuff, right? That's because we're going to be starting project 2 today. When you open up that other, come on, don't say. So when you open up your other file, the Swinging Pendulums one, what you get are 3 different pendulums. Very, very similar to the one that we just did here in class. So what you want to do is you will be animating just the arm parts as they interact with and follow behind the top. So this top one weaves back and forth a couple times. The middle one hits an object, and the third one gets pushed by an object. Now, different people find that different ones are harder than others. I've had a lot of people tell me that the middle one's the hardest. Some people have said that they feel like the top one's the hardest. And then I've had a few people say that that last one is difficult. So depending on you personally, you might think, oh no, this is going to be easy, I'll be done today. But keep in mind that it might be more difficult than it lets on. Don't worry, I will be showing you some examples. Question?
Do all three of those need to be the same material?
No. So, why are we doing this? I want you guys to get used to doing things that are less robotic. The next project after this one will be a character. So you do need to understand how to use this overlapping action, just like we needed to learn the timing and get you back into the graph editor before I throw you to the wolves. I mean, character animation. So, close to being thrown to the wolves. So this is going to help you guys kind of focus on just this element of animation because it is one of the most important ones. So what you're going to be doing is using that Maya file I gave you guys. You can have these pendulums move and swing. And yes, you may do this one in 2D. Just what I would recommend is match up your timing of how the pendulums tops move as close as you can. So if you do want to do 2D animation for this one, you can, just let me know beforehand. And then this is due rendered on Tuesday the 15th. So that does give you a week. So next week's classes, Tuesday and Thursday, are lab days. I'm not going to make you guys come in. I might not even come in. I might be coming in from home. I might have my face just up here on the board and Zoom. But if you do want to come in, I'll be here. I'll have the Zoom open the whole time during the class time. So if you do have a question, you can just pop in. Even if you think it's silly, just be like, hey, just checking to make sure this is something that I can do. I'll be like, yep, cool, you're good. Or I'll be like, no, this is kind of why, and that sort of thing. And then just remember, like always, make sure it's not AVI format. MOV is all right if you can't do H.264/MP4. Just not AVI. AVIs are too big. And you can find this right up here on D2L. It's under the assignments section. So that being said, let me show you some examples. So you can change each individual pendulum to be different weights. They can be different materials. They can be all sorts of different things. So as you can see on this one, this top one is nice and flowy. It's kind of snappy. Maybe it's magnetized. That middle one's kind of bouncy and snappy. And this one's really nice and fluid. So you can do multiple different types of materials. You can do different weights. You can do all the same weights. You can do different things. So that first one, this one was very nice and rigid. This one here made this middle one a little bit more fluid. And then if you want to, this person went ahead and when they took it into Premiere, they just made each one have its own label here so that I didn't have to work as hard to figure out if they were trying to do heavy, light, or springy. So you can do that if you like to. It's not required, but it's nice. So you can really tell that different things are made of different things, or each arm is made of a different type of material. I would prefer if you didn't adjust the speed, mostly because it will defeat the purpose of having to get that drag just right. Because for all you know, if you do decide to go into character, you'll be given something and be told to just put some overlapping action on it, get that body mechanic to work. Don't change anything. So this is kind of practice for that, to get that timing to match up. Now, the hardest part about overlapping action, just in general, is just to make it look natural. Remember, this is one of those things, just like when you guys were in the principal's class, I'm sure they mentioned it in some form or fashion, you have to relearn how to walk. You have to relearn how to think about these things. Overlapping action is something that we just ingrained in us can understand. We can see something and be like, yeah, that's not right, that's not natural. So make sure that you are paying attention to that. Make sure you're paying attention to timing. If something doesn't look right, take a few steps back and think about it. Ask for someone's help to look at it. I'm always willing to look at stuff. You could even just be like, hey, I play blasted this. Here's a link. Can you look at it for me and tell me what you think? I'll take a look at it. So, does anyone have questions about project 2 at all? 2D is acceptable. 3D is acceptable. All I ask if you're going to do 2D is you tell me beforehand. Question?
Yeah, where there's with the projects that we have to render our stuff in EXR files, right?
Mhm.
Okay.
So this one, you can still use PNG and JPEG for this one, but EXR will look nicer.
All right.
Question?
Is simulation acceptable?
No. No
That
simulation.
kind of defeats the purpose a little bit, doesn't it?
You must do it yourself. I will be able to tell. Simulation is my thing. I will be able to tell. I'll be like, that's too perfect. Do it again. Yeah, so don't simulate. It shouldn't take you too long. I'm really just giving you guys some extra time because I know rendering it takes a while.
Yeah, the doors are still not fixed.
Yes. Question?
Well, it passes when
Okay. Yes, you may definitely email me your 2D options about programs. I have no personal preference. You can use whatever is most comfortable for you. I do know Photoshop's really good. You can definitely use Toon Boom. I don't know if Flash is still a thing. Adobe Animate is definitely something.
Krita 2.0.
Krita. So yeah, you have some options. Technically, Flash is still a thing, yes. But yeah, you can use pretty much whatever program you like. Other question?
can we rotate the top of the pendulum?
No. This is the view I want. This right here. Another day. Another day. I'm pretty sure actually in one of the character classes you do, you put it in 3D space and you have them toss balls at each other. Yes.
For this overlapping action classic, this is sort of like thing for us to
Yeah, that's
get
just-
familiarized with it.
Yeah, that's just practice. You don't have to keep it. You can get rid of it if you want. You can save it as a reference and be like, this is how I did it. You can do that.
Alright.
Any other questions? Alex, how you doing? Still confused? Okay. So, okay, you're making me nervous. If you have a question, send me an email or just stick around. I'll still be here. So I'm going to go ahead and end this Zoom meeting so I can get it processing, so I can get that up on YouTube for you guys as reference video. Just keep in mind that first like 15 minutes of the video is probably just me standing up here being like, what am I going to do? And muttering to myself. So just ignore that. So if no one has any other questions, that's all I have for lecture today. I wanted to give you guys a little bit of in-class time to ask me questions. To my knowledge, I think the render farm is working. In theory,
Theory.
it's always in theory.
Oh, also, could you check if you could open my exercise? I can't, and I don't know why. Like the play one.
So it looks like it's running.
Oh,
So it looks like it. So yeah, that's a thing. So yeah, guys, remote, I'm gonna go ahead and close this. If you have a question, pop back in. I'm just gonna immediately close it, immediately reopen it, just like always. And that's all I got. Bye, guys.